Every Monday I get free therapy here on 938 Live, and hopefully so do you. It's a Slice of Life hour with me, Eugene Lowe, for your dose of a DIY motivation. And helping us with that today is my guest, Dr. Gregor Lange. He is a senior lecturer at NUS, consultant clinical psychologist and clinical supervisor as well. He is German-born, Irish and American-trained clinical psychologist, and his work experiences include working in public health care services in Ireland, private clinics in Ireland and the USA, Vietnam as well, and is currently lecturing at NUS. He has also worked as an independent consultant, researcher, and author. Gregor's clinical work has included working with children, families, couples, and individual adults with a variety of problems for more than 10 years. He is particularly interested in mindfulness, which incidentally we're talking about today, mindfulness-based interventions and how mindfulness can enrich the lives of clients. Gregor, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me on the show, Eugene.
Okay, mindfulness is something that is very much talked about these days. Yes. Do you think people understand how it works?
As you said, it's in the media quite a bit, and everybody's talking about it, but sometimes it can be a little bit confusing as well. So maybe we can
clear it up,
look at it from different angles today and help people really get the benefits from it, because the beauty of mindfulness is really in the doing and practicing it rather than just talking about it.
Sure. Let's get your angle then. What is mindfulness to you?
A simple way of putting it is really an ability to live your life more in the present moment, to be able to pay attention to whatever is happening at that moment to moment. That may be positive things, that may be negative or challenging things, but really having the ability to notice what is happening while it is happening.
Does this point to human beings naturally having a problem with focusing on the present?
I think if you ask anyone who has tried to practice this, it is something that is challenging for almost all of us. The mind is a very busy organ, and it is designed to think and analyze and look for problems and go over issues we've had in the past, anticipated challenges in the future. So we are kind of genetically predisposed to find this very difficult. So that there's a busyness, and but maybe that also helps us to see that this is quite normal to have a busy mind. But when we start practicing mindfulness, we can also cultivate this different way of being that we also are. More calmer, more present, focused, and able to pay attention when we need to.
Yeah. And Gregor, you're right when you say when it comes to mindfulness, really you have to do it and practice it before you kind of understand how it works and the benefits.
So
and all
the
that.
easiest way of getting a sense of what it is all about is really practicing it and trying to integrate it in your life. This can be in a very formal way, and I think we look at this in a little bit later. Or it can be really informally. Because
a common misconception as well is that people think, so what, I can't think about the past, I can't think about the future. What does it mean that I only can think about the present? So that's something that's quite confusing as well to people. So it's we're not saying you can't, right? How does it,
There's nothing wrong with thinking and analyzing and looking at things that happen in the past, and of course looking into the future is what all our work is about. Planning and designing things and anticipating problems, otherwise we wouldn't exist. But I think it's come at the cost of a different part of us being human beings, which is just a simple way of being and kind of having a different kind of awareness where we don't have to do anything, we don't have to meet deadlines, we don't have to be so busy. But I think today's society is just so chaotic and busy and distracting. Most of us haven't learned a different way of being. We're always on the autopilot, always rushing after things, and we rarely get a break from that. And a lot of this also like natural proclivity towards focusing on the past and the future also causes a lot of psychological distress, a lot of it quite unnecessary. Yes, because you, again, if you're living in the future and anticipating problems, a lot of those problems probably will never occur. And going over and over things that went wrong in the past will not help you move forward as well. By just going over and over them, it really may maintain a depression that you have or actually pull you down into psychological problems.
So would it be, fairly accurate to say that mindfulness then is probably acknowledging, yes, we do have this tendency to dwell on the past, things that we can't do anything about, but realizing that, yes, I should stop doing that because I can't do anything about it anymore. Let's move forward. And yes, there's some things I can be worried about, but let's deal with the things I can actually do something about.
Yes, exactly. And also not judging yourself for maybe going into the past or into the future. That is just what our minds do. But then having a choice moment where we create some distance between all the thoughts and all the busyness, where we can then decide, well, what's important for us at that moment.
That's a key word, isn't it? Without judgment.
Yes.
I mean, yeah,
because often then we may worry a lot, or we may go over things that went wrong, but then people often add a second layer where they beat themselves up about it. Oh, I'm so stupid for doing this. Or why am I so worried? I shouldn't be worried. And then it becomes like a mental torture to themselves.
Yes. Okay. So we get that part of it. Then how that being more mindful will lessen the psychological and emotional distress in our lives.
Yes, that's what they're finding in interventions. Yes.
Well, which could increase happiness as well, right? Because then we tend to focus on more realistic things, more things that can bring us happiness rather than.
Well, and also happiness is really only available in the now. A lot of people think, I'm going to be happy when I achieve something, when I get something, but these are all in the future and they may or may not happen. So really the only time where we can access happiness truly is in the present moment.
All right. I'm chatting today with Dr. Gregor Lange. He is a senior lecturer at the National University of Singapore NUS, consultant, clinical psychologist and clinical supervisor, sharing more about his perspectives on being more mindful and living in the present moment. Coming up here on A Slice of Life Hour with me, Eugene Loh, on 938 Live. Why is mindfulness important? Yes, we talked a bit about that as well, but we'll go into some other important reasons for that. Also, mindfulness psychology, mindful psychology, which is a new exciting area as well. How can we use those various elements that make up mindful psychology to lessen suffering? Now, that's a great question. And, coming up here on the show, do stay with me, Eugene Loh on 938 Live. Getting some do-it-yourself motivation here on A Slice of Life Hour with me, Eugene Loh, and I'm getting some help from Dr. Gregor Lange, who is a senior lecturer at NUS, consultant, clinical psychologist and clinical supervisor, and we're talking about mindfulness today. And earlier we talked about what mindfulness is and a bit about why it's important. I suppose, reduction of stress is one huge thing. I mean, we're also stressed out, right? So, anything that helps us reduce that sort of psychological agony is great. Yeah? Well, what else does mindfulness do for us, Gregor?
Well, I think it goes way beyond just managing stress. By being more in the present moment, you're actually showing up to your life. Because recent research has actually shown that maybe almost about 50% of the time you're not paying attention to what you're doing. You're not actually in the present moment. So that applies to your work, that applies to your intimate relationships, that applies to even doing anything with your friends, activities. If you're not present, you're not able to actually fully enjoy it and give it your best.
Yeah, you're not feeling it.
You're not feeling it, yes.
Yeah.
Your mind is elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that has huge implications. Your life passes you by.
Yes.
And then, of course, on a clinical spectrum, we may get people coming in and saying, well, there's no more meaning in life. I don't know what the purpose is. Because, of course, they're not actually enjoying their life and tuning into what's happening moment by moment.
Yeah, there's a lot of anxiety, right? Over, just a simple example of your work or doing anything, playing music maybe, when you're playing, when you're preoccupied with how to play, the technique and all that, and then performance anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah, basically, right?
Yes.
And then you end up not really feeling the song or the piece. So that's how, there's so many layers really that we can get into.
Anxiety and anxiety disorders in particular, they're all defined by worrying about something in the future that's to come. I'm going to fail, I'm going to do something wrong, people may judge me, and then people can get really lost in those loops of thinking and not even recognizing that they're having all these thoughts.
Right.
Mindfulness really helps them to disentangle and notice, this is just a thought I'm having. It may not actually be my reality.
So it helps to ground us or to center us.
Yes, exactly. And then other problems that people face, maybe depression or sadness, often is rooted in the past. People ruminate and go over and over all the things that went wrong in their lives. So by doing mindfulness exercises and grounding them more in the present moment, we actually see that things like depression don't have to come back, and people can really resolve these kinds of clinical problems.
Yeah, it helps perhaps take our focus off certain negative things that maybe we don't really have that much influence over.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of these things are out of our control anyway.
Yeah.
But it kind of frees the person up also not to be so reactive.
Yes.
That if something happens in their lives, maybe our initial impulse is to fight it or push it away or cling on to the things that we want so much, but it kind of frees us up to just see these as things unfolding in our lives, but we don't have to get so caught up in them.
Yeah. And it's not saying that we can't or shouldn't do anything, but like what you said, it's more thinking rationally about how we can respond in a reasonable, logical way.
Exactly. It just creates a little bit of space where we'll actually make a much better decision in the end, because it's not driven by our fear, it's not driven by reactivity, it's not driven because you have to get back at the other person. It creates that bit of mental space where also your whole physiology calms down. Your brain is actually functioning a lot better. You're making more, as you said, rational or logical decisions, and your body is also calmer when you're doing this.
Okay, so tell us more about mindfulness-based stress reduction. What's that all about?
Yeah, this is a really popular program from the US. It started about 35 years ago by a person called John Kabat-Zinn, and he was working in a hospital working with patients who had chronic conditions, chronic pain, cancer, conditions that the medical doctors couldn't help the patients with anymore. And he was wondering, well, what else can we offer them? And he was playing around with some mindfulness exercises, meditation, yoga, and he put an 8-week program together helping patients practice these techniques. And what he soon realized is that the outcome and the changes are actually quite remarkable. Improved quality of life, lesser pain, immune system was functioning better, general happiness is improving, anxiety going down. And this has really been one of the forerunners of the mindfulness revolution as such in medicine and also in psychology. So hugely influential.
And obviously it's not something you can explain in 5 minutes, but I'm going to get you to do that. Just for, there's a lot of, living in Singapore, as well, we're notorious for being stressed out and depression is it's a huge thing. And a lot of people go through it. Sometimes they don't even realize that they are depressed. And, so what is it that, what are the key points about this program that you can share that might get us thinking about how we can use it?
I think the key point of this program, but really any mindfulness intervention, if it's a formal program or individual practices, is practicing it. So it is learning the skills to pay more attention to the present moment. Those can be formal mindfulness meditation practices like mindfulness of the breath, walking meditation, eating meditation, but it can be other things that are much more informal as well, just paying attention to when you're brushing your teeth, what does that really feel like? But most of us don't even notice. And while you're brushing your teeth, you're thinking about breakfast. While you're having breakfast, you're thinking about work. While you're at work, you're thinking about your dinner. And while you're at dinner with your wife, you're thinking about work the next day. So you're never actually present. So really bringing your awareness to whatever you're doing.
Okay. How would you practice it just on a normal daily basis?
A combination of both the formal and the informal practices. So usually I would start my day with maybe 30 minutes of silent sitting, where I simply focus on the breath moving in and out of my body, grounding myself in the physiological sensations of breathing. So simply observing the breath coming in and out. And of course, my mind will wander many, many times, noticing when my mind is no longer on the breath and bringing it gently back. And then it wanders off, and I bring it back. And wanders off, and I bring it back. That is the practice. And we know it actually strengthens our physiology. The attention centers in our brain get more adaptive and more functional, and then that has in turn an effect on our emotional centers as well.
So it's basically, I suppose, any sort of practice or routine that helps you still everything, just make it blank?
Not necessarily. Sometimes that's a bit of a misconception.
Yeah.
People expect it to be still or nice or relaxing. It may not be.
Right.
You may actually notice how turbulent your mind is, or it may feel a little bit agitating. But the key is really noticing what is happening for you.
Yeah.
If it is relaxing, it's relaxing. But if it is busy in your mind, it is busy in your mind.
Not resisting it, not struggling
not
against
resisting,
it.
just noticing, this is how it is for me in this particular moment. And then being okay with that. Not pushing that away or not judging yourself. I'm doing it wrong or I don't get it.
Right, okay. I love what you say. Well, I don't think you said it as such, but in our correspondence, there was a phrase, a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. And I suppose that's both in wonder in terms of just randomly walking about, and in terms of, thinking about things too much, overthinking and just letting it run wild is really quite a thief of happiness.
Yeah, and quite a lot of research points in that direction. So they actually look at people whose minds are wandering, and then they're asking them, well, how are you feeling when it is very busy and when it is wandering? And what they're finding consistently is that mind wandering actually correlates with unhappiness. So the more your mind is so busy and you're not able to bring it back, the more unhappy you might be. And we're seeing increases in depression and anxiety and just general unhappiness.
Okay. And we're talking about mindfulness living today here on A Slice of Life Hour with me, Eugene Lo, on 938 Live. My guest, Dr. Gregor Lange. He is a senior lecturer at the NUS, consultant, clinical psychologist, and clinical supervisor. More on mindfulness and how we can start practicing it, because Gregor says, it's in the practice, it's in the doing that we slowly, gradually get to really experience it for ourselves, and therefore we truly understand what it means to be mindful. Do stay with me on A Slice of Life Hour here on 938 Live. More in about 15 minutes after headline news, sports and business. A wandering mind is an unhappy mind, and that's wonder as in thinking about things. But I suppose it also relates to the wandering mind, which can go all sorts of ways if not controlled. So that sense of control is very important, isn't it? And mindfulness is partly about taking back that control over your wandering mind and grounding it and thinking more about the present and sort of a buffer between external events and you before you react to something which may be from negative emotion perhaps, and not really about the issue itself, and so many other things really. If I allow my mind to wander as well, I could go nuts, so mindfulness is to help us center our mind. Tell us just briefly, for those who might have just joined us, just briefly what mindfulness is about.
Yes, it's really about being able to live more in the present moment. So when you're speaking about control, it's really being able to control your attention better. That if you need to and choose to be more in the present moment, you actually have the ability to do that. To pay attention what's happening moment by moment as your life unfolds.
So it's being more mindful about your mind, really, just to think about what you're thinking about.
And how you're deploying your attention.
Yes. So it's more proactive, sort of like active management of your thoughts.
Yes, because otherwise it's kind of like your mind is running your life. Wherever your mind is carried away to, that's what you're thinking about, or that's what's driving your life.
Okay.
Mindfulness gives you really the skill to actually take charge of your life and live it maybe in a more full and meaningful way.
And most of us have heard of mindfulness, but there is this new area of mindfulness called mindfulness psychology. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, I mean, this is kind of a new term, but maybe also a new discipline. It's really also, when I'm teaching about this, it's really different disciplines coming together to help us understand scientifically why this is so and how this can be useful for everybody. everybody. So we're getting people coming from spiritual domains like Buddhism, for example. We're getting psychologists and neuroscientists coming together, and then we're getting other brain scientists who are, simply scanning the brain and probing it and looking at what are the neurological structures involved in this. So it's very exciting cross-discipline dialogue, how we can understand what mindfulness is, but also how we can make it more useful for everybody.
And we were talking earlier about dementia and its applications for helping us manage that condition as well.
I mean, one of the things that we started to notice is people who practice mindfulness obviously have better attention, but also with better attention comes better memory skills. So this is an application for students and younger people, but also conditions we know when people grow older, losing memory and not being able to maybe do their life skills as they did when they were younger. Some really exciting research has shown that actually the brain doesn't degenerate as much for people who practice mindfulness. So when they, for example, scan the brain of normal people, we see that the outer layer of the brain is shrinking in size, which suggests that there's a dying off of your cells. But people who practice meditation for a long time, with age, their brains does not shrink. Now, we don't exactly know what that means, but these are quite amazing, very recent findings suggesting that actually by practicing this, we may not be doomed to old age memory loss and losing our faculties when we get older.
Yeah, and it sounds like something that should be in all our schools.
Yes, and I mean, on the flip side, rather than trying to treat people when they're old, and maybe it's very difficult to prevent what's already happening, really where I see this being hugely important is to, as a life skill for really young people. And it's moving into schools in the US and in the UK already. They have mindfulness-based school programs.
Even kids, like in primary school?
Yeah, it's starting in primary school, and it's the new ABCs. The A is teaching them how to pay attention. And again, kids are expected to pay attention, but ironically, nobody's teaching them how. Mindfulness and mindfulness practices are the way of doing that. There's an epidemic of ADHD, attention deficit, and kids are being medicated, but that's not a solution. Right, and then the B of the new ABC is there an emotional balance? Kids are not being taught how to manage their emotions, how they can regulate when they're angry, when they're frustrated with their studies, when they're frustrated with being bullied. So managing their emotions and having a balance of that is like the second B of the new ABC. And then the third is compassion, teaching kids the skill and abilities to relate to each other better. I mean, my impression from Singapore is maybe there's less bullying and conflict, overt conflict, than we see in the West, but it's still happening, and maybe it's happening more online, not so much in the classroom, but I think around the world kids would benefit from being able to relate to each other better, and again, mindfulness is shown to bring out those skills and abilities in kids. They get on better, there's less bullying, they're more empathetic, they share more. And of course, the bottom line is also they have better grades and enjoy going to school. So isn't that what any parent would want, or any educator would want? Yeah,
it's all-round benefits, especially in this day and age where there are so many distractions. And everything moves so fast, our attention spans are just getting narrower and narrower. All the more imperative for our children.
Yeah, really crucial. And, this is a new generation that's growing up with these distractions. We, maybe the older generation, didn't have to, so we have to offer something for the younger generation as well, how they can negotiate with that and how they don't get swept away with that information overload. And what we're seeing also is, yes, kids being overwhelmed and stressed and suicide rates going up, which isn't a good trend.
Because that's it, isn't it? I mean, we cannot handle everything that happens to us, and a lot of the stress we experience is thinking that we should, or we can, or we have to. So what we realistically can really do, in essence, is to come back to ourselves and really just go inside and be aware of ourselves. Once we are more aware of ourselves and understand ourselves better as human beings, the flawed people that we are, humanity, we begin to understand other people better as well. Yeah,
and mindfulness really cultivating that relationship to themselves. as kids or as adults, but then it leads always to better relationships within the classroom, within the family, within the society. So really amazing benefits can come from it.
Yeah, I mean, how we'd like to be treated is how we're going to treat other people as well.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of things, really.
And just the whole environment in the classroom changes, or even if it's in a workplace, the work environment changes. People actually enjoy whatever they're doing more. And isn't that something that we would all want more of?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if we just, enjoyed what we did and just did what we enjoyed, I think everybody would be in a better place.
Yes.
Just to put it simply.
Or also if we are not enjoying something for whatever reason at that moment, then being okay with that. Because not everything can be fun all the time.
Yeah.
There's going to be challenges, there's going to be difficult situations. But the difficult thoughts and emotions that come with that don't have to control us or lead us to misery. That we have better repertoire of skills how to manage that when that happens.
Yeah, we explore other options, we think of possibilities, other channels for perhaps, expressing our opinions or emotions, perhaps. So
it's very exciting.
What sort of other applications or implications does this mindful psychology have? I mean, we talked a bit about illness. It's really everything, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so exciting is what we're seeing it really applied in any domain. It's in education, it's in medicine, it's in psychology, it's moving into leadership and business world. We're seeing it in sports and performance. In my own work as a therapist, I work a lot with couples, interpersonal relationships, right? Our ability to listen and really tune into our partners is hugely important. So I don't think there's any domain where you can't bring it to and where it wouldn't be useful. So it's really, as I said earlier, a life skill that we really would want to think about imparting it to everybody. Learning it if we don't know it yet, but also giving it to our children, the younger generation.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, how really just starting with yourself really expands,
can really be transformative. And really relating to a new way of being and being with each other. That's a lot more compassionate and caring and peaceful as well.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple of minutes to go. Gregor, is there any sort of well, I wouldn't say final word, but something you want to share with listeners before we end the show?
Well, I think, as I said at the beginning of the show, we can talk about mindfulness and you can listen to it on the radio or you can read about it. The key is starting at and experiencing it from the inside. So if you're at all curious about this, there's a lot on YouTube, maybe Googling somebody like John Kabat-Zinn, who is the founder of MBSR. He gives some great talks and he starts introducing some guided meditations, very simple ones, breath meditations. So YouTube is always a good start, but then there's also centers in Singapore, maybe like Brahm Center or various other non-profit organizations that share different skills where you can learn this. So that's also a good starting point. And then just simply trying it out and seeing the change it can make in your life in a very brief period of time.
Yes, absolutely. There are just endless resources you can turn to, really, and just starting is the most important thing, I suppose.
Yes.
Gregor, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you, Eugene.
And sharing your perspectives with us. My guest today, Dr. Gregor Lange, Senior Lecturer at the NUS, Consultant Clinical Psychologist and Clinical Supervisor. And if you have something to share with me as well on the show that can help all of us, I suppose, live better, healthier, happier lives, do get in touch with me. Email me at eugene@mediacorp.com.sg. I'm Eugene Lowe, and this has been A Slice of Life here on 938 Live. Thank you very much for your company.